LinkedIn News.
How lucky am I? So many people live their lives bored as hell. And here I am about to experience a little zing of adrenaline. And I get this free dose of adrenaline every single day. How lucky is that? And it totally just like Jedi mind tricks yourself into being grateful and thinking, I'm going to enjoy this moment.
That's ABC News' Chief National Correspondent, Matt Gutman. I'm Leah Smart, and this is Everyday Better. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and here at Everyday Better, we are always striving to take care of our well-being, which includes our mental health, whether that be at work, at home, or in relationships. So all month, we're focusing on the most common yet least understood mental health challenges. And today, Matt gets really vulnerable as he shares how he overcame his decades-long struggle with panic attacks that almost ended his career and sent him on a journey of self-discovery. We'll be back in just a few moments. Hey everyone, from LinkedIn News, I'm Leah Smart, and this is Everyday Better, a personal development podcast where every week I sit down with some of the world's brightest minds and bravest hearts who use science and story to share strategies for how we can flourish individually in relationship to others and to the world around us. As regular listeners of the show will know, I recently gave birth to my first baby. And as I adjust to my new life as a mom, my lovely producers, Grace and Emily, are helping me out. I'm going to let them take over for just a few moments, and then I'll be back with you for the rest of the show.
I want to set this one up by talking about our weekly team-wide stand-up meetings here at LinkedIn.
Okay. I'm surprised by this. Okay.
Emily, can you explain for the listeners what this meeting is and how it works?
Okay, so this is a meeting we have every Tuesday. It's about an hour long, and it's all the different shows and production teams at LinkedIn coming together. And we go through the shows one by one, share updates, anything they've learned throughout the weeks, and any challenges we've been facing.
And as you already know, I dread this meeting.
I'm pretty lucky because I don't really have to speak in it, so.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's on Tuesday, like you said. I would already be feeling nervous about it on Monday. And by noon on Tuesday, when the meeting starts, that nervousness is close to full-blown panic, like sweaty palms, dry mouth, racing heartbeat. Like that's what I'm experiencing sitting in the room waiting for my turn. And then when it is my turn to present the slides for this show, I really would pretty much black out. And so I often don't remember what I've said. And then as soon as the meeting ends, I'd start stressing about it for the following week.
I shouldn't laugh.
But it is kind of funny because it's so low stakes.
Right. Well, I think that definitely is what I'm thinking. And I know that that's rude to think because I'm a person who's comfortable with public speaking. Mm-hmm. But it gives me a lot of empathy that you're going through that every week. And I didn't always know. I mean, I knew you were nervous. I guess I didn't know it was always, I didn't know that it weighed on your mind that much.
Which it does. And I also think that's ridiculous and silly because I know intellectually that these meetings are not a big deal. No one is grading me or taking notes on my performance.
Right. We're not presenting to the CEO.
No. And I feel pretty close and well-liked by the people in these meetings. They are our colleagues and friends. And I know all of this, and I remind myself of all of this to try to calm myself down. But it doesn't change the fact that this meeting is one of the hardest, most stressful, most anxiety-inducing parts of my job. I also know that what I'm describing, essentially a fear of public speaking, is not unique. I'm sure plenty of our listeners can relate. But that just makes the whole thing more confounding to me. And what I mean is that for the longest time, I really couldn't understand why these meetings had such a hold over me and why I couldn't reduce my anxiety around them until I read this book that really did change the way I understand what's happening for me in these meetings and why I feel so nervous. So the book is called No Time to Panic: How I Curbed My Anxiety and Conquered a Lifetime of Panic Attacks by Matt Gutman. Matt is ABC News' chief national correspondent, and he suffered from panic attacks for a long time, basically since he was in college. You wouldn't expect that, though, based on his career. He got his start in journalism as a freelance print reporter for an Argentinian newspaper, and then he spent nearly a decade in the Middle East covering major conflicts in the region. So he has a public-facing, high-stress job that puts him in truly life-threatening situations. And for most of his career, his panic attacks didn't get in the way of his job. Until this one moment in 2020, when something did happen that really jeopardized his career and inspired him to write this book and really figure out why he was having panic attacks and what he could do to treat them.
Today, Matt is here with us to talk about the research and reporting he did for No Time to Panic. He'll explain what a panic attack is and what evolutionary psychology and biology tell us about why we still have panic attacks, as in, why haven't humans evolved out of having them already?
Which is what I found most helpful in the book for understanding my own feelings about these meetings.
He'll also share the techniques he's discovered that help him manage his panic and anxiety, both in real time when it's happening and what he can do to prevent them.
One other thing I want to say before we get into it, Matt makes the case that our panic is, in some cases, a superpower. And I'll be honest, I've heard this argument before, and I've never really bought it. But this time, that idea resonated. And I think Matt can convince you, too, of the utility behind your anxiety. Here's Matt.
I feel very comfortable taking physical risks, and I've taken them in my work, right? Covering wars and conflict for over 20 years. Doing physical challenges, like crashing a car into water and escaping, and crashing a car into a frozen lake and escaping, and doing the Coast Guard's Dunker, which is another version of being drowned and escaping, and jumping out of helicopters and swimming with sharks. I'm okay with physical challenge and risk. But it was the psychological element of it, the social fear of being rejected, which terrified me. And that's what was the genesis of the panic attacks, the fear of being judged by my peers. And the research of the book helped me understand why this fear is so powerful and why it's so overwhelming and why I'm not alone in feeling it. So I'll go back. So I had panic attacks throughout my entire TV career. And the irony was that in the very beginning, I had the reputation as the guy who was always on when it was live. And part of the reason was that I basically was dying inside. And so it created this vibrant, zinging energy that I had and presented on live TV. It's like, Matt Gutman really brings it, And so like, yeah, Matt has great energy. Let's put him on live more. I'm like, no, more.
You're like,
more.
Actually, no.
But it was this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I kept doing more and more live. Little did anybody know that I was suffering from these panic attacks, which were terrifying to me. And I always felt like I was right on this knife's edge of absolute failure. And then in January of 2020, I got a call from my boss. She calls me, she's like, Matt, and I can hear the breathlessness in her voice. We think that Kobe Bryant has been killed in a helicopter crash. We believe his daughter, Gianna, maybe others were on it. I need you to get to the scene right now. So, I finish whatever I'm doing. I pack a bag, and we end up doing this special report. I end up making a cataclysmic mistake in the reporting. And we don't know it immediately, but within an hour, it's obvious that I made a mistake. I basically was taking information that was reportable and not reportable. And in my brain, while I was having a panic attack during the delivery of this special report, I conflated the two. Eventually, ABC suspended me for a month. And there was a reckoning. I'd been suffering these panic attacks for 20 years at the time. And I basically decided either I'm going to figure out the panic or I'm going to leave the TV news business. Now, there's one more wrinkle involved in this decision, and that was that day with the Kobe Bryant helicopter crash. It was a weird time for me personally because My father was also killed in a plane crash when he was basically the exact same age as Kobe, and I was the exact same age as Gianna. And I had just surpassed him like 2 months earlier in age, which is a total mind F when you outlive your deceased father. And I never really thought that I'd live past 42 because I thought that was like the natural terminus of life. And I'd lived like that. Like, I'd been arrested by the secret police in Venezuela. I'd been through wars. I had been shot at. I had survived all this stuff. And I lived life with almost reckless abandon. And here I am. I'm still alive and like, oh, maybe I have to preserve this thing better.
You're like, wait a
second. Yeah. Anyway, so that's how I arrived at this reckoning where I had to make a decision about what to do with these panics and whether to stay in this business.
So when you were suspended, first of all, just a random question, but did you expect that would happen?
I knew that the hammer would fall. I just didn't know quite how hard. So I didn't expect that. But blessings come in many different kinds of disguises. And I hate that I made that mistake, and especially given that I have experienced the death of a parent and a loved one in a plane crash and something so similar. It was pretty crushing to think that I may have in any way hurt Kobe Bryant's family.
Yeah.
But I ended up growing from it. So for me personally, it ended up being sort of a very weird blessing in disguise.
Well, we got this book out of it.
We got the book. I mean, that wasn't the plan initially. The plan initially was, I am so broken. I need to be fixed. How do I go about fixing myself? And I didn't think about writing a book until about a year after Kobe Bryant, because I'd started doing all this stuff. Actually, the seminal moment was about a year later. I kept trying to find panic attack support groups, and they're very hard to find.
I was going to say, I don't even know if I've heard of that.
No, but there are like 80,000 Al-Anon and Alcoholics Anonymous groups across the country and the world. There are many thousands of anxiety support groups, but there are almost no panic attack support groups. And this is sort of in the pits of the pandemic. And I call the ADA, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, and like all these different groups. I'm like, help me find a group. And they couldn't. There were 5 groups. 3 of them were defunct. I joined one of them, which was in Brooklyn.
Oh my God.
And I couldn't find any in LA. I wanted to go in person.
Oh my God.
And I realized that there is a huge constituency here that is not served. And that's when I decided to write the book. I'm like, if I can't find a panic attack support group, what are all of the millions of people out there who are experiencing panic doing? What they're doing is suffering in silence, sitting in their homes, becoming ever more reclusive because they're afraid of having a panic.
Yeah.
And
your world goes like this.
And their lives, exactly.
Wow. So this is for everyone who's having this experience, who's going, maybe I don't even know what it is, or I do know, but I don't know what to do about it.
Exactly. One of the things is that panic is a very quiet experience. It's all internal. I've had panic attacks. Millions of people have watched them, but nobody has any idea.
No one knows.
All of this, implosion is happening silently inside someone. And so people with panic tend to internalize it. So they only, as you just did with your hands, which, some of the listeners won't be able to see, is your world gets physically smaller and smaller. You're afraid to leave the house. You're afraid to drive out of your neighborhood, and you don't want to go anywhere. So hopefully this book helps those people more than anyone.
Let me ask you this, because I explore anxiety and have been more recently a lot on the show, personally because I've had my own experiences with it. And for me, it's been a lifelong thing. I never knew what a panic attack was when I was younger. I don't feel like, growing up in, I was born in 88, so growing up in the 90s, it didn't feel like this was a common conversation. So it felt like, this thing happens. I generally didn't talk about it, pretty much kept it a secret, figured I'd just get through it, keep going. It was just this embarrassing thing that I would sweat a lot, or that I'd get really nervous, that my eyes would dart and I'd be looking around. All these things that now I know are symptoms of having an anxious episode, having, chronic anxiety, and or having a panic attack. I know they're all different, but can you describe for people, because we haven't yet talked about panic attacks specifically on this show, for someone listening now who's wondering if this is them, what does a panic attack feel like?
So a panic attack can be as unique as a fingerprint, right? Everybody experiences different symptoms. But typically the most common are shortness of breath, rapid heart rate, sweating, shaking, trembling, feelings of derealization. You're not quite sure what's going on or who's around you, tunnel vision, and an impending sense of doom. I feel like I'm molting into a werewolf, like I'm shedding my skin, sweating, shaking, back pain, shortness of breath, rapid heart rate. I feel the thumping of my jugular vein. So 40% of everybody who turns up at the nation's ERs complaining of cardiac arrest, thinking that they're having a heart attack, is actually having a panic attack.
Wow.
58% of the people turning up at the ER for the same symptoms are either having a panic or anxiety-related symptoms. So a panic attack so closely mirrors a heart attack that 911 responders who I interviewed for this book often, most of the times, can't tell the difference, which is why it's so scary for people, which is one of the reasons that everybody tries to tamp it down.
Right.
Oh my God, that was so painful. Okay, let's act like that never happened, so maybe it never comes back.
We never do it again.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the thing is, once I was suspended and I had this reckoning, I had to understand it. I'm like, what the hell is this thing?
Yes.
Okay, I'm done pushing it away. And for like 12 years in the business, I had no idea what it was. I was so good at compartmentalizing everything from the trauma that I saw to the panic attacks that I experienced that I just said it was, I called them nerves. But I was really having panic attacks.
Right.
It took me years to figure that out. And once I did, I still basically tried to shove it away, put it in some dark suitcase in the back of a trunk of a car that was driving far, far away from me.
And just to be clear, these were consistent.
They were pretty consistent, yeah. Not every single time I went on air, but I think it's very safe to say that I had many hundreds of panic attacks in, the first 15 years of my career on TV. And so I had to understand what this was. And evolutionary psychology and biology came to the rescue. I became obsessed with it. Like, okay, why do we still have this in the human genome? Like, why does it still exist? Like, we have evolved out of having tails and hairy hands or, horns and all these vestigial aspects of, animal physiology. Right? We don't have this stuff anymore, right? We are these evolved creatures. So why do we have this weird old vestige of, needing to run away from the lion when it's attacking you when there is no lion about to burst out of the LinkedIn offices here in Empire State Building? Right. I mean, King Kong is on the outside of the building, but we'll leave him.
But it's your email.
Right.
Like the lion is your email.
Exactly. And so basically what I ended up understanding through talking to all these evolutionary biologists and psychologists, ultimately, is that a panic attack is normal. A panic attack actually makes sense if you look at it through the lens of what our current threats are. Right? So a panic attack is a physiological response to a threat. And 30,000 generations ago, when we were roaming the savannah and a lion came bursting out of the bush, the symptoms of panic were perfect for trying to save our lives, right? We had all this glucose running to our muscles, our hearts were pumping blood and oxygen to our muscles so we could run fast. We had adrenaline, so if the lion took a bite out of our ass, we wouldn't feel it and we'd be able to keep running. We had tunnel vision, which is our pupils dilating because we were most vulnerable to attack at night. Right? So that's why your pupils dilate. We sweated to make us more slippery, to be able to evade the grasp of animals.
Yeah.
Right? It was perfect. One of the things that happens when you're having a panic attack is that your internal GPS is like working gangbusters. You know exactly where you are physically.
Yes.
But in a room full of your peers, when you're talking, all of these symptoms are really not good. So why do we have that? Because there were two primary threats when humans were evolving. One was the physical threat of a lion coming out of the bush or rocks falling or whatever it was that could physically kill us. The other was that humans evolved to live in groups, in cave groups, tribes, whatever it is, but small groups of people roving the land together. And if you did something that was so boneheaded that got you kicked out of the group or so taboo, you'd be roaming the savannah, whereupon a lion would come out of the bush and eat you.
Right.
So we essentially learned to equate social threats of being kicked out of the group, which means the fear of our peers rejecting us, as being as dangerous as the physical threats of a lion coming and eating us. So that's why when I went on air, I was so panicked, not because there were millions of people watching me, but because I was worried about what my peers in the control room in New York would think about my performance. And so the evolutionary psychologists were telling me it's perfectly normal to actually have a panic attack. And it completely changed my frame of mind and frame of reference about this experience. Before I even learned how to try to make myself better, learning about it and learning A, it's normal, B, it's actually not going to kill me, even though it feels like impending death, and C, that, you know what, maybe people who experience panic are actually more sensitive and more attuned to the peers and people around them that gives them sort of a superpower edge. Like, I am so hyper aware of the response of people around me. Sometimes it ends up in panic attacks, but it actually makes me much more sensitive and a better actor within this group.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. As I was listening to you, I was listening to your conversation with Dan Harris, and I've listened to you in other places talk about this. The first thing that was most meaningful for me to hear, and even as someone who has gone deep into anxiety, I've used my own challenges with it as to fuel my passion around it, was, oh, this is normal. Because your initial question was, am I broken?
Yes.
Right? And like, I think
Precisely.
that's most of our initial questions. Am I broken? Is something wrong with me? Because when I look around at everyone else, it seems like they're doing fine. Like, how am I the only one? And we know in reality, we're not the only ones. But oftentimes when you have panic or you have anxiety, whatever the experience is with some sort of mental health challenge, you feel like you're alone. And like nobody else goes through this. So the first thing that was most powerful for me, and I think will be powerful for people listening, is it's completely normal. And it's not that you were supposed to be scrubbed from, the evolution of humans because you had anxiety or panic. It's that this allowed you to actually escape and live.
Exactly. So just to reframe what you're saying so well, and then I should have said earlier, is that it's actually adaptive. This is a feature. Being anxious in many ways and having panic in some ways is a feature. There is a reason it has stuck around our genome for this long, because it has some advantage. And so that to me, and I think to you also, was a huge aha moment.
Oh my
Just
God,
the
yeah.
realization, A, I'm not broken, and maybe this is actually normal. And we also know, statistically, that 85 million Americans are going to experience a panic attack in their lifetime. So we're also not alone in having this sort of slightly, very painful experience, but also one that is sort of normal and very, very survivable.
So for you, this was, you've said this before, but it wasn't about all of the people tuning in to watch you that made you panic. It wasn't all of these experiences that you've gone through. And I think I've heard you call yourself like an experience collector. And I so resonate with that, right?
Yeah.
So I fully get it. It wasn't those crazy experiences that got you into panic. In fact, you said you are at your best oftentimes when you're in those moments because of the lack of, or your belief that perfection is assumed to not be something that's, you can't get there. You'll never be perfect. So you can't be flawless when you're in, war zone, or when something's happening and you're watching someone else experience some of the worst moments or the worst moment of their life. Something comes down for you as far as your guard. But then when you sit in front of, the control room and you have your peers who you so respect, your biggest fear is that social, not physical fear. And that is what fuels the anxiety, is will these people go, I'm not worthy?
1,000%. She's done her homework, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, she has.
And I think that this is one of the reasons that when I talk to people and I give talks about panic, the most common forum that people experience severe anxiety or panics is speaking in front of their peers. It's that meeting in front of, your team or the bosses, or that Zoom meeting in the morning when it's an all hands meeting and everybody wants to hear what you're about to say, and that it's that expectation of performance. And the thing is that humans, some of us are destined to perform, and some of us are performers. But many of us, evolutionarily speaking, going back to the cave, we're just there to go thump some mammoth, right? Like, that's what, the chief would give his fancy speeches, but most of us were not there to give speeches to the other tribe mates. We were just there to go, skin some buck. And so it's not the most natural thing to address your peers, and that's why we get so nervous doing it. So realizing these things was great. I then had to figure out how to make myself a little bit better.
Yeah.
And that was more challenging in some ways.
Coming up, Matt finds a solution to his panic attacks in some surprising and unusual places, and discovers that journalism and mindfulness have more in common than you might think. We'll be back in just a few moments. And we're back with ABC News' chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman.
The gold standard for panic attack syndrome and people who experience panic attacks is cognitive behavioral therapy, right? And so the idea is it has two tentpoles. One is the psychoeducational part, and the other is the exposure part. So the psychoeducational is like, okay, if you're afraid of going on airplanes, you're much more likely to be killed in a car crash than in an airplane. You're probably more likely to be eaten by a shark than die in a commercial airliner. But tell that to someone who's in a plane in an aluminum tube, 7 miles in the air, hurtling itself across the landscape at 500 miles an hour with 200 other germ-spewing humans. It is a scary thing, like demonstrably scary. So one of my problems with the psychoeducational aspect of cognitive behavioral therapy is that it minimizes people's fears. And the thing is that my biggest fear did happen to me. I did make a terrible mistake while having a panic attack, while on live television, and I had a major consequence because of it, a near career-ending consequence. So you can't tell me that my fears are never going to be realized because I've just realized my fears.
Right.
So the psychoeducational part for me is a little bit sketchy. The exposure part is something that we can all work on, and it does help. But it wasn't good enough. I needed something else. And I understood that my powers of compartmentalization, which served me so well in journalism, which enable me to talk to people on the very worst day of their lives and to be empathetic and sympathetic, and then to go do the same thing the next day. I've compartmentalized all this pain. I've put it away in the same place I put the panic attacks, in this dark suitcase that I shove in a car that's being driven far, far away from me.
Is it really gone?
No, it's not really gone, and it's not really working. And I'm so good at it that I need to find a way to get out of my right mind in order to fix my mind. And so for me, one of the methods that worked were psychedelics.
Right.
And so I'm not going to get too much into it. This is a family show.
Yes, but I'm curious what you experienced, especially in the vein of, like, I think you've talked about this control and really like ego, right? Like, I mean, I've heard people describe anxiety as a challenge of control, of over control. And I'm like, yeah, that sits for me, that resonates. Like, what did you experience when it came to those two things?
I experienced vastly different experiences on different medicines. One of the things I experienced on 5-MeO-DMT, which is the Sonoran, toad venom. People think it's really weird. It is a little weird, but was just pure grief. I let out, what is it in the Michael Jackson song in Thriller, like the funk of 20,000 years or whatever it is. Like that was all
you.
Yeah, that was all the stuff that was inside me. And I basically just screamed and cried out and carried on in the way that my ego would never let me do in my right mind, ever. But whatever it was, it released this thing that allowed me to expunge all of this gunk of grief inside me. And basically, most of the times that I did these medicines, first of all, I did it with facilitators, guides, actual psychologists and psychiatrists. So it was all very controlled.
Right.
But a lot of it was just finding a way to get the grief out. And eventually I learned how to cry and work on my grief without having to go through a psychedelic experience.
This was like the door or the window for you.
Exactly.
What was the grief? I'm curious.
I mean, it was grief of like losing my dad when I was young. It was the grief that I've accumulated of talking to all these people who've lost loved ones, who've died, who've lost their homes, children, like I absorb a lot of this terrible stuff that we deal with every day as journalists on the front lines of wars or natural disasters. And I guess I thought that I had disposed of it in a responsible way, but I hadn't really. Yeah. And so it took some work to get to that. Also, in some of the psychedelic experiences, I experienced, pure love and joy and gratitude. and just a realization of how incredibly fortunate we are, and I am in specific. And that's what I had to find as a way that I could still enjoy going live and doing the stuff that is the bread and butter of what I do, and enjoying the other stuff in my job that really makes me feel like I am the luckiest person on the planet. And so now I've found that balance. And one of the things is a very simple trick. It's a mindfulness technique that's combined with a gratitude technique, which is when I'm about to go on live, I think, how lucky am I? So many people live their lives bored as hell. And here I am about to experience a little zing of adrenaline. And I get this free dose of adrenaline every single day. How lucky is that? And it totally just like Jedi mind tricks yourself into being grateful and thinking, I'm going to enjoy this moment.
Yeah.
It's a really little change in your, the reference point in your brain, but it helps a lot.
So in the moment, like I've heard you say you're not necessarily done with panic attacks. They haven't fully stopped for you, right?
No, I don't think. I'm not biologically and physiologically wired to not have anxiety. It's just part of my DNA, and the acceptance of it is a pretty important aspect of knowing this is who I am. There are ways to mitigate the anxiety and to not bring on a panic attack. Like I am not chugging a double espresso before I go on air.
Right.
In the morning before GMA, I have herbal tea.
Right.
Right. There are little things that you can do to help yourself. But I can't ever say that I'm not going to have a panic attack again. I think that would be journalistic malpractice. And if I try to convince myself that I am now fixed, that is really setting myself up for a future disaster. Instead of having the humility of thinking, I am a flawed human being who is trying his best every day to get through this with as much grace and as much integrity as possible. And to say that I'll never have a panic attack, I think is not fair. They happen.
So what do you do now you've gone through the psychedelics, you've done those things that you don't, most people don't do every month. What are you doing to maintain, I've heard you talk about breath work, which I also love. But what do you do that keeps you even keeled?
So I do top off on the psychedelics, once a year now, or if I can, every 6 months, but not really. I would say once a year. Everybody wants to know what's the trick? What's the one thing that you can take away? I don't have the one trick, and anybody who offers the one trick in their anxiety or panic attack book is a charlatan. I have a couple of things to offer people who experience panic. One is you're not going to die. People go to the ER all the time. Millions of people a year go to the ER at the expense of billions of dollars to the system when they're having a panic attack. But I can tell you, if you do think you're having a serious medical emergency, please go to the ER. But also, we should educate ourselves better about what a panic attack is, and then it's not going to kill you. Second, when I ask people, and I've talked to, at this point, many hundreds of people about their panic attacks, how long does it last? Hours. I was in this panic for hours. No, it's clinically impossible. Your amygdala and your nervous system is geared for you to have a panic attack for 15 to 90 seconds. You cannot make it last longer, even if you wanted to. The panic attack is the moment in which your brain registers and assesses the fear and the threat, right? It's the period your brain is assessing the threat, and that period of assessment is short. After that, you're experiencing anxiety, which we can all live through and all of us survive. But basically, after 90 seconds, you're just experiencing severe anxiety, and it's something you can get through. So rethinking about panic as something that is short and fleeting and survivable seems to really help people.
Yes.
And lastly, it's the basic stuff. It's taking care of your mind and your body, right? That's the easy stuff. Get sleep. Try to exercise. Get sunshine. Eat right. Don't drink too much. It doesn't help. But also try to be just mindful about walking, about sipping water, about doing the dishes, about, if I'm outside feeling the goodness of the sun hitting my face. Those are all things that we can do as we're walking to the next meeting or doing whatever it is that we're doing in our day. So it's just being a little bit more aware. And if I feel sadness, I do try to cry. I do try to let it in and then let it out. It's not always easy to do. But one of the things that I'm most proud of is letting my kids see me cry. So we go to movies. What is it? Wild Robot. So there's this kids movie
I've
called
heard of
Wild.
that, yes, but I haven't seen it.
I
Yep.
basically started crying in minute 5. And then like within like 4 minutes, my son, who's 10, is like, Daddy? We're watching it with friends. So there's like 2 kids in between us. He's like, are you crying already? I'm like, yes, Ben. Yes, I'm crying. Oh, and then like every time I started crying again, he would be like, are you crying again?
He's like, is this real?
Yes, I'm crying. Basically, that movie broke me. But I want him to see me being able to emote.
Yes.
And, when I'm sad, I will let it out. I don't have to present this tough guy thing with him.
Well, I was going to say that's especially important, I think, for men in our society to be able to say, yes, you can cry. Yes, of course you have feelings. You're a human being.
Exactly.
Of course you can be sensitive. You're a human. This is all like a social construct that we're working within. But the reality is you will be sad. You will have to feel it. I do agree. Like I was challenged with really accessing tougher emotions for a while. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
And like I wanted the positive emotions. And I think there's a lot of value to that. But to shut off the others is when you start to, I think, experience some of these challenges in a more meaningful way. And so breathwork for me was actually the thing that really opened it up. Meditation and then actually doing breathwork, which is the way my teacher talks about it is conscious connected breathing. I think you talked about it as like holotropic. So it's 2 breaths in, 1 breath out, just laying down and letting your brain shut off.
Well, because you're basically shutting down your body by depriving it.
Right. Yeah, and you talked about lobster claws. I'm like,
yeah.
I know that very well. Yeah.
So one of the things that we do as journalists and that you do is we are professional noticers. And that is mindfulness. Mindfulness is essentially noticing the moment. And so you can notice the pain that you're feeling in the moment and register it. And letting that in, as you said, not just only the happy moments, but also noticing the kind of crappy feeling I'm feeling. Like, okay, I'm feeling that way. Why am I feeling that way? What's going on to cause this? I mean, it's really a very minor thing to do, but it is quite helpful. So I just encourage anybody to let that stuff in. You don't have to dwell on it, but just allow it in, notice it, and then as it leaves you, let it go and say goodbye. And, you'll see it again soon, I'm sure, at some point, but you don't have to kick it out the door.
Right. It's part of the human experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. What have you learned about self-compassion? Because I know you've talked about that.
Oh, such a good one. I'm glad you brought that up. So one of the things that I used to have in my brain was this very ferocious drill sergeant who would berate me all the time for being a mess up. I was a disaster. You're constantly failing. You're useless. And I've retired that drill sergeant in favor of someone who is more compassionate and a little bit gentler. Like I am still a very hard-driving journalist. I'm a hard-driving person. I'm very demanding of myself, but I'm also more compassionate. And I know that I'm not going to achieve all that I can. And I know that there are going to be fallow times during the day where I'm not super efficient. And I'm not going to be doing the things that I want to do, and that's okay. I don't have to be succeeding or be efficient at whatever I'm doing all of the time.
How did you retire that drill sergeant? How did you even know it was there?
The reporting of this book helped me realize that I have this drill sergeant. Doing the psychedelics helped me get rid of that drill sergeant. And it showed me the depth of some of the pain that I was holding in. And then I realized the only way to release it is by emoting. And then understanding that this guy's not helping me. I want to do well. I want to be an example for my children. I want to help people with this book and with my work. And by being so hypercritical of myself and beating myself up all the time, that wasn't helping anybody. Certainly not me.
What do people have to know about this book? Like, what's the most important message you're trying to convey?
You're okay. It's going to be okay. Honestly, like that was the thing that I took away. 1, panic is normal. 2, you're not going to die. 3, it's fleeting, 15 to 90 seconds. And there are things in your power that cost 0 money that you can do to help yourself. Nobody really wants to hear it, but it's the basic things of self-care. Better sleep, a little bit more exercise, a little bit more sunshine. These, we talk about, I talk about all these medicines, these drugs that I took. But the best drugs in the world are endogenous. They're inside us, right? What is endorphins? endogenous morphine. It's the morphine your body creates to kill pain. Serotonin and oxytocin, which you're about to feel a lot of as a mother, the bonding drug. We feel that if you hug someone for 25 seconds, you get a release of oxytocin. So when you hold someone, and my wife and I practice this, and I do with my kids, hold on, give a full, not like a 70% hug or a 40% bro hug. Give a 100% hug, wrap yourself, feel your hearts against each other. And if you do it for long enough, for 25 seconds, you release oxytocin, which is the most wonderful drug that humans experience, the bonding drug, the bonding hormone. And it makes you feel so much better. A 5-minute walk makes you release serotonin and dopamine. There are all these things that we can do within our power that basically can flood our body with these hormones that we have inside ourselves already that can make you feel so much better. So take advantage of those if you can.
Yeah. We are who we were thousands of years ago.
Right. And
which is why all the things that they did back then work now. We don't have to do all these extra things.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that you're talking about is self-empowerment, right? The reason we listen to these podcasts and that you try to elicit these thoughts in people is so that people at home can take advantage of it and self-apply. And one of the points that I'm trying to make in this book is that we have the power to make ourselves better. And a lot of this stuff already exists inside of ourselves. We don't have to need something else to make us better, some sort of medicine, some salve. We got this. And that was the point in this book. It's like, okay, we got this. You're going to be okay.
You're not broken. And I think part of the thing for me, and I think in our what's the quick solve? What's the magic pill? How do I get rid of this, right, is the ultimate question, because I think I'm broken. So how do I put myself back together? The answer is you're not broken. And the other thing that I found really powerful that someone said to me as I was talking about my anxiety was, okay, so what if you do experience anxiety for the rest of your life? How might you grapple with that? And what is the story you might tell yourself about that so that you realize that it's okay to experience it?
Again, it's a feature.
Yes.
It may not be useful all of the time, but it is actually a feature that's pretty useful, and that's why we still have it.
Yes.
So let's embrace it.
I love that. All right, I'm going to have you complete these 3 statements.
Oh, man.
The first is better humans are.
There's so many different ways to answer that question. I mean, all of us have something. None of us are perfect. All of us are flawed. So just recognize that. Okay, what's the next one?
Better work is.
I want to complete it with a single word, but the thought I want to encapsulate is the kind of work that makes you able to just focus on that one thing, that makes you absolutely present in that moment, which is really the sum of all fulfillment for so many of us, right? That thing that makes you just drill down and feel alive and feel energized for that period of time. So whatever that challenge is that makes people feel that.
I love that. A better world has.
More compassion, more sympathy, more understanding.
Amazing. Matt, thank you so much for being here.
Leah.
This was amazing. I love talking to you. And thank you for
Likewise.
your work. Yeah.
Thank you.
That was Matt Gutman, ABC News' chief national correspondent and author of No Time to Panic: How I Curbed My Anxiety and Conquered a Lifetime of Panic. If you liked this episode, you'll also love our conversation on coping with everyday anxiety with Wendy Suzuki. You can check it out at the link in the show notes. Everyday Better is a production of LinkedIn News. The show is hosted by Leah Smart and produced by me, Emily Reeves.
And me, Grace Rubin.
Asaf Gadron is our sound engineer. Tim Boland mixes our show. We get additional support from Alex Kuznetsova and Ali McPherson. Sarah Storm is our senior producer. Dave Pond is head of production and creative operations. Maya Pope-Chappelle is director of content and audience development. Courtney Koop is head of original programming. And Dan Roth is the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn. Thanks for coming with us, and we'll see you next week.